Hello and welcome to my mixed media tutorial on my gratitude garden. To get started, we are going to use a jelly plate, and if you don't have one, don't worry, I will show you in a little bit what you can do if you don't have one. But for starters, we'll do the jelly plate printing, and I use cool colors to start, which are the blues and greens, because then I don't dry my paper in between and I don't have to worry about them mixing and making a yucky color. So I'm rolling out the blue, not too thick, not too thin. You don't want it to dry, but you also don't want paint flying off the jelly plate. Rolling it with my brayer and rolling off paint onto scrap paper. My first print is circles using a paint cap. And I did not clean the jelly plate beforehand because I like added texture from previous prints. The paper here is packing paper that I saved from a shipment. So press it down firmly and peel it off, and you'll see a cool layer with all the previous paint on it. And I've actually sped up the video because it's so tedious just watching me roll the brayer on the jelly plate. So slow. So the green is a middle shade of paint between the three that I'm doing because I'm doing all the cool colors right now. I'm sticking with the third circle theme and also masking, which means I'm covering part of the jelly plate because I want the first print to show through. And those are pieces of transparency sheets that I cut. I'm using bellow wrap to add circles, and then a wooden skewer to add smaller circles using the flat end. And I'm also going to draw circles with the flat end. I tried with the pointy. Don't do that because you could poke a hole in your jelly plate. And so you want to do a variety of sizes because it adds interest in the print. So I'm going to use that first print and put it on the jelly plate, rub it around, make sure all the paint gets picked up. And then wherever I had that strips of paper, you'll see the blue, and that's the mask. So take off the strips. I use transparency sheets because they're easy to clean. And this is a ghost print, getting a fresh print of piece of paper, and you'll see the cool texture behind. So the third layer is using turquoise, which is my darkest color. It's just easier to go from light to dark because it's hard to go the other way around because it's difficult to make a piece lighter, but you can go darker very easily. So once again, sticking with the circle theme, I'm using transparency sheets cut into circles for another masking layer, overlapping the circles in some places, making sure some of the circles go off the jelly plate. And wherever I have these circles, I'm going to see the prints that I've made coming through. And then the turquoise will cover the rest of it. And since they're all cool colors, I didn't bother drying the paper in between because they can mix and they won't make an ugly color. So I'm taking the circles off, and I'm going to do another ghost print with that first ghost print paper, and this paper is just going to have two prints on it. And voila! So if you don't have a jelly plate, what you can use is a page protector sheet taped down to a surface. I actually already have one here on this surface that's been used, and then you'll want to put a towel underneath or something soft so you can offer resistance when you're pushing your print down onto the paint. So this first layer is just with yellow. I'm not going to add anything to it because I'm kind of curious to see how much of the old paint might come up with this print. And this layer is warm colors, so first is yellow, and then I'm going to orange, taking a ghost print what's left here to get all the paint and make my makeshift jelly plate all dry. And with this series of prints, I'm also going to stick with circles just because you saw me do that in the previous one, so I'll just stay on consistent. So I'm starting with a masking layer with my circles and the transparency sheets that I made them with. And I'm also going to add some, that stuff. Bubble wrap, more circles around it to stay consistent with the theme. So the prints aren't as clear as they are with the jelly plate, but they definitely get the job done, as you can see there. There might be not as clear of an image for the ghost print, but it's definitely, I've used the makeshift one before, this makeshift jelly plate, and it's been great, and it's definitely worth the price. So the third layer is my red, the darkest layer, sticking with circles again, just in a different way. And I always like to clean my brayers because I use that scrap piece of paper in collage. So here we are with the transparency strips again, masking off sections, and I got out the skewer, flat end, decided to draw some lines. You can do so many things with these jelly plates. While they're wet, you can doodle and draw and just have fun. Taking one of my prints to get that layer, and then the ghost print. And you'll see in this layer, since I was scratching into the jelly plate, there is some paint that actually was coming off with it. So instead of being done, I wanted to see if more of that paint would come off. So I'm just doing a real quick layer of yellow and using my scrap piece of paper that I used to clean my brayer and seeing what else will come off. And this will also give me another print. And so since this paint was pretty wet, I went ahead and used a palette knife to scrape off all the dry paint, and then my makeshift jelly plate is ready to be used next time. So next we're taking the canvas and using papers in the Liquitex matte medium to collage. I'm splitting the canvas into a top and a bottom. At the top is going to be my sky, and I'm using wallpaper, book paper, music paper, and I'm just go ahead and put it down wherever I feel like it. When you're using the collage medium, you want to make sure to put the glue under the paper and over it to create a good seal, and then the paper can be painted on. I'm using a card here to smooth out any air bubbles. I found that it's easier to do that when you've already put the matte medium, or if you've got Mod Podge, that works too. After you've already put that on top of the paper to smooth it out, because it's wet and it just glides easier and not as high of a risk of ripping the paper. So here you can see I'm just kind of messing around with where I want, testing out here and there. I'm really not giving it too much thought at this moment. I just go wherever I feel like putting it. And so I have the another jar of gel medium that I had brought out for the project, but I did not end up using it. I wasn't sure which one I'd want to use with the collage papers or which one I would prefer, and the matte medium worked well. I use Mod Podge a lot as well. I highly recommend that, especially if you're starting out and you don't want to pay more for the matte mediums. Once you've done your collage of the sky and you're happy with it, then it's time to move along to the grass. For the grass, I'm using scrap pieces of scrapbook paper. I've got some tissue paper, and some of it's actually coffee filters that I had made prints on with the jelly plate for a previous project that I just went ahead and included for this one since it was greenish. The white and green paper is actually wrapping paper from a birthday party that I saw and saved. So really whatever papers you like, go ahead and grab them. Some thicker pages might need encouragement to stay down. You just kind of use your fingers or the card and hold it down, push it down after you got the glue on it to keep it there. You'll see that I tear paper a lot. I prefer the torn edge of the paper instead of a clean cut with the scissors. It's just personal preference. If you want to cut, go for it. It's your project. But I just prefer rough edges and kind of a messier look. So go ahead and keep collaging until you're happy with the separation of the sky and the grass, and then set that aside. Next, you'll get your prints that you made with the jelly plate, and go ahead and grab any other prints you might have, or what you made is fine. I happen to have a stash of other pages that I had made with the jelly plate. They don't all have to have prints on them. You can just get regular book pages or music paper, and you just want a variety for later when we make our flowers. And on each piece of paper, I'm writing what I'm grateful for, and I'm using big flowy writing. I'm kind of just writing intuitively. I definitely have one specific thing that I'm grateful for, and then I elaborate on it, why I'm grateful for it, the reason that it's come to mind right now, any thoughts I have on the matter. So just go ahead and write what comes to mind about different subjects that you're grateful for. I did, of course, family and health and work. Those are just a few of the subjects that I have here, but they can be as little as that piece of chocolate that I had the other day at dessert. Wow, that was delicious. It doesn't have to be all profound, because it's really finding the gratitude in the little things that add up to, I think, a joyous life. Once you are finished writing, you can go ahead and put that aside, and then we will be working with the canvas. Here I have my 2 shades of blue and a white to do the sky. I always like to go ahead and squeeze the paint right on the canvas and then start working from there. Starting with the paintbrush, tracing around the pieces of paper and blending it in with my finger. I love using my fingers. It's my favorite tool because I think that it blends the paint out better than with the paintbrush, because with the paintbrush you can see the bristle marks, and it's just not my preference. So I am rubbing it in with my fingers, making sure to cover part of the collaged papers to make it blend in instead of looking like paper just stuck onto a canvas. And then here's the Bahama Blue to add another shade and dimension to the canvas. So you'll be adding your blue around the canvas just kind of until you're happy and you like the way that the paint all blends together with the rest of the canvas. And then we'll move along to the grass, taking my deep green, forest green, and regular green colors, using the paintbrush to start to pick a color and paint around each paper initially. So I'm just kind of painting around the edges and then using my finger to blend it onto the page. Like I said before, to make it blend in, I'm using the paintbrush to fill in any white parts of the canvas that might be showing. And then while I've got my paint out, might as well paint around the edges of the canvas. I'm using just the regular green color since that's what I have the most of, going halfway up the side of the canvas to keep the separation between the grass and the sky there. Once the grass is done, you want to dry it. I use an embossing heat gun to speed along that process. And next up, I'm using stamps with an archival ink stamp pad because it's permanent. Just taking my stamps, randomly placing them around the canvas. You want to think about, if you have one on one corner, putting it somewhere on the other side of the canvas. You don't want it to be too symmetrical, but you want some balance. I had to put my hand behind the canvas with this script stamped because I need to offer resistance. So most of the stamp will transfer onto the canvas. I use black and white a lot to make more of a contrasting texture colors for my canvas because they stand out a lot, and I generally always use them. Here I have the Punchinella that I got at a garage sale, and I was so happy about that because it was a total score. So just using the white and placing it randomly around the canvas here and there. I'm not really putting too much thought, just following my gut and where I feel like putting it. Next is a stamp that I'm going to use the Bahama Blue with. And clean your brush between, of course, so you don't mess up your colors. I'm using just a cute little stamp that has some squares, and I'm still using the same color blue for this guy because I want it to be visible, but I don't want it to stand out too much. I just want to add another dimension to the sky. And if you do use paint on stamps, make sure you clean it off afterwards so you don't ruin the stamp. And I'm going to do the same thing in the grass using this teeny tiny circle ribbon that I had found also at a garage sale. Adding this to the grass to add another variety, another variation to the grass, but still keeping it within the same color palette. And often when you stencil, you get paint on the front side, so I turned it over and tried to get a reverse image of that stencil. Next up is modeling paste. This is the light modeling paste. You'll scoop out a section of it, and I'm mixing the saffron yellow paint color with it because this is going to be my sun and I want it to be three-dimensional. I'm using a vintage plastic doily that I got off Etsy or eBay. You can find them on either one. You'll want to use your palette knife and scrape it into the stencil. You want to be careful not to move the stencil while you're working. I'm trying to get it into each little ray that's poking out there and carefully lift it up. I had some going off the top of the canvas, and so I initially was wiping it away because I didn't want it there, but then that looked too clean cut, and so I went and added some texture back using my skewer and trying to add some separation between each section of the doily. One thing that's nice about modeling paste is that it gives you those peaks and adds a lot of raised dimension, and I didn't want to take that away by scraping it off, so I'm just going back and adding some peaks there. So next you'll set that aside and let it dry and get your gratitude pages back out, and we're going to make some flowers. This is a technique that I saw Jelly Belly make. She has a YouTube channel and she's a very prolific artist and doing a lot of great recycled crafts and a lot of tutorials. So what you're going to do is you cut a square, fold it into 4 sections, and then hold the bottom folded corner and cut a simple petal shape. I make mine just very simple, just because I like the way they look, and you're going to make 3 different sizes because we're going to layer the 3 petal shapes together when we make our final flowers. I ended up cutting a total of 28 petals, and then I laid them all out and started mixing and matching. I wanted to have a good variety of colors within them, not always matching the same colors together, and depended on the sizes of each petal as well. I ended up having too many petals, but I didn't realize it at this point. I ended up using a total of 21 individual petals to make 7 flowers total, so it just depends on how full you want your canvas to be. But mix and match until you're happy, and then you're going to start gluing them together. I use a tacky craft glue, which you can find at most arts and crafts stores. You can also use a gel medium. I like to use the heavier kind because it sticks together right away. Once you're done gluing the petals together, you're going to raid your stash of buttons. I happen to get these at an antique sale, and it's just full of a wide variety of plastic and metal ones, and it's just kind of fun to see what you can come up together. When I pick out my buttons, I like to try to have the button color represented within one of the petals that make up the total flower. So you can just pick out whatever petals fit your preference. I have a combination of some larger buttons mixed with smaller ones. And once you have arranged all your buttons, you can go ahead and get your canvas out to make sure that the doily is dry, and you can speed up the process of drying it by using the embossing heat gun or a hair dryer. Next, you'll take your flowers and lay them out on the canvas. You want to think about the color combinations that make up each flower. You don't want one color concentrated too much in one area. And you also want to think about the sizes. If there's some petals that are too big, you'll want to go ahead and trim those down before you glue the flowers to the canvas. I actually, like I said, made too many. So as I was doing this process of laying them out, I realized that there are a couple that I didn't need or didn't want based on their color and sizes. So I just, through process of elimination, set them aside and decided on the final layout of where I wanted to put the flowers. With that same tacky glue, go ahead and glue the flowers onto the canvas, and then we'll be adding the stalks with the forest green paint and some black for contrast. So with the thin paintbrush, just go ahead and draw a straight line lined stalk down. I'm going behind the petals to make sure it's not stopping too soon. Nothing fancy, just a little stalk. And while the paint's wet, I'll usually use that time to add the black just a little bit onto the green, and then I smudge it with my finger just because I like that the messy smudge look that the finger can give. And when you mix the wet paint together but not thoroughly, they're just barely blended. That's my style. Once that paint is dried, you'll go ahead and get your black rollerball permanent pen and add a cute little leaf. I like to draw my petal line just real sketch-like with short, quick lines, just to give it a loose outline, but not being trying to be perfectionist and staying within the lines or the boundaries of where the paint is. I just think it's a really more personal touch, and obviously is handmade because it's not perfect and it's perfectly imperfect. Okay, my friends, we're almost done. The final stretch, and that is curling the leaves to make them really super three-dimensional. So I'm using a skewer here. I started with my pen and it was just kind of too big and bulky, so I got my skewer back out and just kind of run it up the length of each petal and just curled it around it, gave it the pressure on the back of the skewer as I rolled the skewer up. In hindsight, it probably would have been easier to do this before I put them on the canvas, but it worked just fine. And whoops, that one's a little bit too long. Just get a little snip snip, a little curl curl, and yay, it's done! I hope you enjoyed this mixed media painting tutorial, and you can find more information about me on my website, www.lulubees.com.